Welcome to the Big Cat Lounge podcast. I'm your host, Big Cat KZ. Thank you so much for listening in. The Big Cat Lounge is where we interview guests in a casual lounge setting from all over the world. We are on the way to achieving Big Cat International status. New episodes are dropped weekly on all places you listen to podcasts. Please rate and subscribe to help us grow. Welcome to the Big Cat Lounge podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Big Cat Kyle, and today's guest comes from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, where he's the founder, owner, and CEO of EsportsHow. Kelfish4 is what the esports world refers to him, as Uzair is an esports and gaming consultant. Uzair is teaching the business of esports and gaming through articles, a Discord community, which creates a forum to learn from the mistakes of others and how to avoid unnecessary pitfalls. We welcome Uzair Hasan to the Big Cat Lounge podcast.
Appreciate it.
Led you to Kelfish4 activities. What was that your passion to begin with? What drew you to that?
To the name Kelfish4 or the esports industry?
Yeah, both.
Okay, so the name actually came just randomly. I was playing with a few friends and we were actually playing some Minecraft mobile edition. And this was like back in high school, so a long time ago. And the name I just used it one day and it just kind of stuck. It's a weird name for sure. If I could go back, I'd probably change it, but I'm content with it now. And in terms of getting into the esport industry, actually, I used to be a really big League of Legends player back when I was in high school as well. And then I started up an esports club. And that club ended up taking off, where then we started up a esport student-run organization for the city or the cities in the Greater Toronto area. Mm-hmm. And then that's what really started my path getting into the general esports industry, was that organization.
So many different types of jobs. I was starting to look into it because I wasn't really familiar myself. And, there's like a team owner, analyst, tournament organizer. Could you tell us some of the types of roles in that industry, just so others can be aware?
Yeah, 100%. It is a massive industry and it's underestimated, especially in the cliche that you kind of presented here, in the sense, or this is like the common conception, is the fact that esports has like, team owners, tournament organizers, coaches, and those sort of organizations. But you have to remember a lot of these organizations, so esport teams and tournament organizers, publishers, anyone involved in the ecosystem, they're essentially marketing platforms, they're engagement platforms. So there's everything from marketing, sales, sponsorship, management, there's project management, product management, like anything you can think of in terms of general jobs, you have that, plus the esports specific titles, as you were mentioning earlier. So it is a massive industry. In fact, I believe between 2018 to 2019, the esport industry job openings, according to Hitmarker, grew by about 86%. I might be off by 1 or 2% there, but it is a massive growth. And just to give you a little bit more perspective on how fast it's growing, I believe I might be really off with this number, but I believe between 2017 and 2018, I was reading a report where the amount of public investors grew by 800% between that year alone versus the prior year. So after 2017, the esport industry has really started to seeing a lot of growth, especially after Fortnite's introduction and the waves it's been given for the industry.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It really has. And for you, when you first got started, you would say it was mostly in high school, and then you just found a need to create a group and a further community, or what really led you to, I guess, expand out, just playing itself?
Yeah. So when I was in high school, my ideal position in life was going to be working in computer science. So that was kind of always the goal. But then I ended up starting that student-run organization, and I had a ton of fun with that. We had over 50 members, like volunteer members that were working on the back end, not even the consumers necessarily. So we've done so much with that organization. There's a lot of mistakes, but the idea with it was to turn it into a nonprofit corporation because of its success and what we were doing. That didn't end up working out, but it started to get me interested into the business of esports. And afterwards, when I started looking at maybe more entrepreneurial routes, it started to make more and more sense that the esport industry is just growing at a rapid rate. It's in really, really good position to start like building in a business now. Like 5 years ago, you would have been early, but the market wasn't as it's not saturated, but there's a lot of opportunities now because of it becoming more mainstream. And there's a lot more investor dollars being put in, a lot more money flowing around the industry. There's still a lot of problems with the industry and its money. And in fact, there's an alleged bubble, market bubble, if you're aware of that terminology. So there's a lot of problems as well. But right now is a really, really good time to get in. And I just decided I want to double down on this.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What role have you enjoyed the most since you have founded EsportsHow, and you have detailed articles explaining, the ins and outs? What role have you enjoyed the most while you've been in the industry?
Yeah, I think a really, really fun part is sales. And esports is different in how sales works. There's a completely different atmosphere because there's a completely different culture in the industry. And that's one of the problems with the industry right now is career transitioning experienced people into this industry that can't relate with the culture. But nevertheless, sales has been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed tournament organizing as well. Doing a bit of project management was actually a lot of fun as well. There's a lot of great stuff in the industry. I can say that much.
And if you're just like starting off, so let's just say, like right now you're just delving into it, like as a high school student, how would you know, like, if you're ready for the next step? Is there like a certain program that's out there that you would go through, or what are the type of resources you should like rely upon?
Yeah. So if an individual was in high school per se, it would depend on their specific circumstance. Like, are they graduating out of senior year? Are they currently within the like high school program? Nevertheless, the thing about esports is that they're really looking for soft skills. That's really, really big. Where your hard skills, especially in entry level, like they matter, and it's very competitive because of grassroots scene. So the unpaid free volunteer scene is really massive. But I think the biggest thing that people underestimate within the industry is actually, reaching out to these companies, trying to see if they can get involved, even for free, even on a volunteer standpoint, and just building relationships. So what a person should do is initially, depending on where they're at, they probably want a portfolio of some sort. They want to become valuable to some degree. And in fact, I'm writing a book exactly about how someone can go about doing this. But nevertheless, going through some volunteering opportunities. And once they've done it for a few months, people spend years and years doing volunteering stuff and not making any money. I think that's a major mistake on their part, because once they have a bit of a portfolio, they need to start reaching out to companies. You can also go to post-secondary esport business programs. They're relatively new. In fact, I went to the first esport business post-secondary program in North America at Lambton College. And I graduated last year, so it's relatively new. But the issues right now, we don't really know the success rate of the programs because we're entering into a really bad economic situation where it's unfair to say, because a lot of people didn't really get jobs, but it's unfair to say it's because of the program. So there's still a lot of ups and downs with that program. But if you're graduating from high school, I would recommend looking at your career specific programs for university to try to get a degree, because you really need that to be competitive in how competitive it is to get a job in the industry right now.
Yeah. And even if you weren't able to maybe go in the industry right away, a lot of these skills are transferable. It's just, being able to have the soft skills and get exposed early on. Yeah. And right now with the gaming content, sometimes there's more viewers than, HBO, ESPN. So there's a lot of opportunities for us to capitalize. And through EsportsHow, you present some of the steps and the ways that you can go about doing this.
There's a lot of different ways. There's not a lot of good material online, which is why I started up EsportsHow as a way to provide that material. But there's a lot of people that are doing stuff on the grassroots level that are figuring it out on their own. And again, you would obviously accelerate much more with additional help, which is why EsportsHow is around. And there's starting to be a few YouTubers that are starting to create some content in terms of how to get into esports, which is awesome. And we need to see more of that stuff. But yeah, completely agree with your sentiment that people just need to start pushing themselves and building the soft skills. And again, the career skills are transferable. So if you're doing some other stuff, try to see how you can relate that into the esport industry.
Yeah. And you've created this Discord community, right? It's fairly recent. Tell me how that's going and what your vision is.
Yeah. So with the EsportsHow Discord server, the intention with that is that people would come in, people would talk to each other and ask questions. And I would have networking events, workshops, and we've ran a few of those already. And we've had a lot of really good discussions with individuals, people that are trying to start up their own esport team, their own organization, or trying to find a job in the industry. I've had calls with dozens of people within the server, and it's been great. Moving forward, though, I know once this book is launched on my end, because that's probably the biggest project on my plate right now, is that we want to start running a lot more networking events. And we've ran a few and they've been really, really well. The people that attended, like, they said it was an awesome experience because they got to build long-term relationships. And we also have some masterminds that we run within there. And yeah, it's a really, really cool platform. And the reason why it's awesome is it's a Discord server, so everyone kind of understands, at least in the esport industry, how to use it and like be involved. But then also you have these opportunities like networking and workshops with information that you're just not seeing anywhere else, because there's not a lot of good grassroots or entry level material in the esport industry currently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there really is not too much. I mean, you have to search it out, but it's kind of difficult if you don't know where to look upon.
Yeah, and the worst part is the people that do write stuff, like for the most part, when I've seen it, it's a lot of fluff, it's a lot of high level, not very, like, they clearly don't have the experience in terms of what they're writing about. And it kind of sucks. In fact, I was writing a article about sponsorship acquisition, and everyone that has written so far about sponsorship acquisition it's completely, for lack of better terms, it's garbage. It's really, really high level fluff, like, put your best foot forward, reach out, send emails, like, just really not valuable information. And when I created an article, I unfortunately, because I was so in depth and so different from what everyone else writes, Google SEO has this tech.
Today's sponsor is Anchor FM app. Go download the free Anchor app today to get started. You can find it at your Play Store or App Store. It's everything you need to make a podcast, and it distributes everything for you so it can be heard on multiple platforms such as Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, and many more. This is what I'm currently using right now to edit and record my podcast, and you can do so from your phone or computer. And the tools are really easy to use to help document the Big Cat Lounge journey. So what are you waiting for? Go today and download it.
Concept called, I'm trying to remember the name. I can't remember the terminology name off the top of my head, but essentially it compares between your information and everyone else's information. Oh, consensus bias. That's what it is. So like if everyone's information is similar to yours, then it would assume your information is right because it aligns with everyone else's. Likewise, that's one of the issues I've kind of noticed. So until other people that have experience at writing stuff, it's going to be harder to write really in-depth information if it differs a lot from what everyone else is writing right now.
Have you noticed there's any like specific strategies that's worked best for getting like sponsorships or like partnerships agreements? Like if would you just like wait a couple of years till you've like won enough like tournaments or have your brand and rankings up, or when do you know when to start?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's important for esport teams. I'm assuming this question is coming from a perspective of esports teams.
Yeah.
But you can, okay. In that case, it really depends on where you're positioned, what's your unique selling proposition, and what kind of metrics you have on board. Because when you're thinking about sponsorship, it's super important to understand what the company is actually looking for, what they're looking to achieve. A lot of the issues that esport teams run into is that they don't really have anything that they're selling to the team, and they always center around them. So like I've seen so many different sponsorship pitches on the grassroots scene, and it's like their message is, hey, we do this, we're doing this, we want money because we want to do XYZ, please sponsor us. And it's the completely wrong approach, where the idea needs to be they reach out to a company. Ideally, if you're starting out, it needs to be local, and that's only possible if your team is locally based. And again, a lot of teams that start up, they don't really think about a unique selling proposition. They just end up building their organization because they want to and they want to have fun, which is fine. But if they're looking to make money, they need something to stand out. So once you kind of know what you stand out with, looking at team or companies that would align well with your vision and your direction, and then once you reach out, understanding what they really want and what they really need, and then giving them an offer that is so good for them. And you're going to get undercut in the initial offers because you have nothing to stand on. But if you can make a really good offer and then deliver, double down on it, they will 100% be willing to take you up, and you can scale from there. But I think starting out, people just don't understand that it has to be a two-way transaction, a win-win situation, and they really need to make sure they can tell the sponsor why they should sponsor them over the hundreds of thousands of other teams that are also looking for sponsorship, and especially bigger organizations, be it inside and outside of esports, that are also looking for that same dollar. Like, how do you make yourself seem so valuable even though you have no experience, you don't have a portfolio of successful sponsorships that can make it like the risk is worth it to go in with you?
Mm-hmm. And what if you're like in a unique situation, like you're in a foreign country? What are some of the challenges you've noticed with like setting up the esports infrastructure? Is there anything that you've noticed, I guess, within the community? Any tips?
Yeah, a lot of issues is that some of the issues are related to the lack of like population and engagement with people and the culture. So like I've worked with people, across the globe, especially in more like Middle Eastern areas. I've kind of seen Middle Eastern is actually growing like fairly well in terms of esports, but even like within the middle of Canada, right? So like Saskatchewan, Alberta, like those different, Manitoba, those provinces also have been really struggling to get their esports scene going. Manitoba has an esports association, so does Alberta. But like within both, and Saskatchewan has the Saskatchewan Esports League, SKL. But like all three of those provinces have really, really struggled to build anything. Part of it is the population, but a lot of it is just the culture and just the monetization structure within esports. Like the business model in esports have been really, really troublesome, to say the least, at the moment, because of how dependent they are on sponsors and the issues between sponsorships and esport evaluations, because that is still up in the air right now.
Yeah, and I think like a lot of it, like maybe like with the tournaments, and then they had like live conferences, it's going to be in the major cities. So if you're in rural parts, you may be limited initially, but in the future there could be better opportunities for you as well. But it's in the infancy.
Yeah, 100%. So once, ideally, like ever since, so the way esports, like their audience kind of grew around 2013 is really when it started to gain a lot of traction, and 2017 is when it started to enter its mainstream phase. So right now it's still very much in its adolescence, and over time, over the next decade, we're going to see a lot more growth, a lot more acceptance, and a lot more infrastructure for the industry.
Yeah. And actually, one thing I'm sure you're aware. So in China, kids and teens under the age of 18 are now restricted to only 3 hours per week to play online video games. So I'm sure that may limit some of those aspiring entrepreneurs and those that wanted to launch before they were 18. They can still, but it's just in a 3-hour window now per week.
Yeah, that the China situation is a bit interesting, especially considering the mobile gaming, growth within China has been massive. So it is unfortunate, it's surprising, but it also makes sense with the political atmosphere why they would take that direction, although obviously it hurts the esports industry there.
Yeah, it does. This brings us to our quote section. Currently 4% of the people on this globe own crypto. Imagine what happens if 30% of the people own crypto and use it as a currency. We are still early. Right now, what do you think is the most common form of payment in the esports industry? Yeah, what's the form?
It's an interesting question. I would assume it's just normal cash transactions. I wouldn't know the specific, like I wouldn't know if there's different like Bitcoin being used much. Like there's always talks of Bitcoin, but I don't think it's that dynamic or that much used right now. It's 100% just normal cash transactions, especially with like these larger players. A lot of the money goes to player salaries, and a lot of the money goes to prizing and just contracting different projects, and all of those would be just normal transactions via a wire tap or wire transfer, sorry, or just PayPal, whatever it would be. It would just be the typical payment.
Yeah. What do you think about the increase in like the cross-platform games that we have now? I know before it used to be like, oh, you can only play it on PS3, you can only play it on PC, on Xbox, but now there's a greater partnership, which is very unique. I think we've been lacking it and needing it for some time.
Yeah, it kind of hurts. If I'm going to speak about it from the esport perspective, it definitely hurts because
Mhm.
on a competitive level, there is advantages and disadvantages to both platforms. And there's most of the time, there's very evidently one platform that is better to play on than the others. So like if I'm thinking about golf, for example, the PGA 2K golf, I believe that's what the game name is, but essentially PS4 is 100% better than Xbox. And I don't think it's cross-platform with PC, but nevertheless, actually that game isn't cross-platform, but they use APIs to make it for leaderboards. Nevertheless, like in that case, Xbox or PS4 is much better. PS4, PS5 is much better. And likewise, even in Fortnite, I've heard a lot of players complain, especially when there's cross-platform allowed, is that those I forgot which platform it is, but one of the platforms has a complete competitive advantage, and it's just unfair for the other players that are using anything else. So it kind of forces everyone to play on one thing, anyways. So from an esport perspective, it doesn't help, and for most cases, people will play on the platform that is the better.
Do you have a favorite tournament stream that you tune into?
If I'm gonna be honest, I don't even watch too much esports anymore. I like my thought process on it is, and I've gone through a lot of thinking about it. I don't even play games anymore. Actually, I think it's a very big competitive advantage because almost everyone in the industry, pretty much everyone in the industry, plays games. So the fact that I don't, I get every time people are playing stuff, I have that time that I can allocate towards working on what I'm working on. I mean, I love the industry, don't get me wrong, and I really enjoy gaming. It's just I've kind of decided at this point in my life, it's not worth the time investment. I'd much rather, just do things like going out for a walk, just like just
Yeah.
other things that aren't going to release so much dopamine, because that'll also help me in terms of getting more work done and pushing myself forward.
Yeah, yeah. And it really helps to, structure your day because, with esports, I mean, it's 24/7. So there's constant news, information's being thrown at you. So for you, you subscribe to some key podcasts, right? The Esports Minute podcast. Tell me a little bit about some of the resources that really help get you good snippets of information.
Yeah, so the Esport Minute podcast, as you mentioned, is amazing. They're literally 2 minutes, and they give you the entire day's worth of information. And then every week, and they also do an esports network episode, which is about an hour long, where they just kind of go through other news and other information like that. So that has been very, very helpful. Before I found them, it was always a struggle to keep up. Also, going through LinkedIn is also really nice, especially seeing the activity with companies that I'm following, that I'm specifically targeting and trying to see what they're doing. So just spending 30 minutes whenever you're walking around, maybe using the bathroom, whatever, going on your phone, we all do it. Spend that, if you could spend that time just scrolling through LinkedIn, seeing what people are posting, what people are doing, that has been very helpful. And I also have an email subscription. I believe it's with the Esports Insider, and that is also useful. And there's also good videos from time to time, but I feel like the written content you can consume a lot faster.
Do you know much about the VR esports right now? I guess it's still up and coming, but have you been able to get exposed to some of it and some
Yeah.
of the technology?
Yeah. In fact, I was supposed to run a VR tournament, and I believe it was 2018.
Mhm.
That project fell through mostly because we couldn't get the funding to push it forward. But I've definitely seen the VR landscape right now. The biggest issue is technology and also the acceptance of VR as a platform right now. So not a lot of people have it. When VR tournaments are ran, they're a lot of times ran either for the very small committed player base, well, I mean, that's usually run by the publishers as a way to increase engagement and increase players. And there's usually not large prizing, not large viewership on those. There's a few games that are exceptions to the rule, but for the most part, it's like that. And the tournaments that do run, they tend to run in like VR arcades that are relatively expensive right now to even get a few hours to clock in.
Yeah, I guess a lot of the arcades, yeah, to your point, I think you pay by the hour.
Yeah.
So yeah, it can be very, very pricey.
VR has a lot of potential and the fact that it's more active. But it's going to be very interesting to see once the pricing comes down, and we're starting to see pricing really come down. I believe it was like the past 2-3 years, like Facebook and Oculus and just the other companies have just releasing really cheap technology that it's interesting to see once it's adopted, how many people would be interested in VR esports over other traditional esports.
Yeah, and I'm sure like some areas of the world, if you can't really go outside to do that activity, you'd like to have the luxury to do it at your, from your couch or at your home. So yeah, it would be pretty awesome. Where do you see EsportsHow.com going in the next year? What does the future hold?
Currently with the website, we're actually doing a bit of a reposition with my company as a whole. I used to do, as you mentioned at the start, B2B consulting. I'm going to move more towards helping people get a job in the esports industry. I feel like that is the current market that really needs to be addressed. There's a lot of demand, and I know I'm the right person to provide that information given my background with getting a job, especially during this economic turmoil situation. Mm-hmm. So the next steps for sure. At this point, the revenue is coming in. I'm going to start having a few writers. So we're going to have a lot more content coming out. And the idea is to provide a lot more grassroots information to help people understand the basics that they aren't getting exposed to. And a lot of it will come from my own experiences because, as you mentioned, I've done so much. I've actually, like, the biggest thing is I've done it. A lot of the other esports bloggers, they haven't done it. They're just talking from a high level. But like with the information, like if you look at the esports analyst post, or if you look at the tournament team owner one, like there's a lot in detailed information that would really help people. And I've gotten a lot of emails and thank yous. And then from there, I'd also like to build out more activity on the Discord. Like if we're doing something once a week, or maybe once every other week, or once a month, that would be a good flow at this moment to be like running a networking event and workshops and working with people one-on-one to get them into the industry. That'll be the next direction for 2022.
Yeah, and if anyone has like any questions, if they want a strategy call, you provide that for free, and that could help guide them down the right path, provide clarity. So that's another venue.
Yeah, 100%. If they just join the Esports How Discord server, which you can go through at EsportsHow.com, and you'll just find it on the front page. Or if you just email me at uzair.hasan@esportshow.com, and you can just reach out, and I'd be happy to help. I've had calls with dozens of people, and it's been very helpful for those who are starting out because they really lack the understanding of the ecosystem, and it's a very interesting ecosystem right now.
So you briefly touched upon your book. Do you have a date of when you'll be publishing it?
Yes, the date now has been moved back to November 3rd. Originally, it was October 20th, but nevertheless, it is going to come out November 3rd. Ideally, there shouldn't be any more movement at this point. And it's a very, very exciting book about getting a job in the industry, starting out from the basic mindset and background you kind of need, and then talking about how you can become valuable, and then essentially the cool techniques and the different methodologies you can do to close a job. Because when people are thinking about landing a job, a lot of times people think that you need to apply through a resume. And the interesting fact is 85% of jobs, but that's about 11 out of 12 jobs, go to people that aren't applying through traditional means. So there's but the issue is most people are applying through traditional means. So there's multiple different avenues so you can apply to jobs through that people need to start leveraging. And that's a big focus of the book, is talking about those and how you can leverage them to position yourself in the industry.
Oh, that's so exciting. Will this be your first book you published?
Yep, it's the first one, but it won't be the last.
Yeah. You've done so many articles, so many blogs. So there's so much content out there.
Yeah, there's so much I could touch on. I think the next book, right now I need to get this last book done, but the next book would definitely be more on the entrepreneurial side, because I think that's a big thing that people are trying to do. And like myself, who's tried to run a business in high school, didn't work out. Then I ran a few others, had, successes and failures. Like there's a lot of good information that people need to hear that I have experience on, that I'd love to talk about further.
Thank you so much for your time and coming on the Big Cat Lounge podcast.
I'm very grateful to be here and be able to share information with everyone that's listening.
We are accepting applications if you think you have what it takes to be a big cat and be a guest on the show. Email us at bigcatlounge@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to the Big Cat Lounge podcast. Hope to see you soon.